Hello, it's Recap Reporter here. Today I'm going to explain a horror movie called The House That Jack Built. Enjoy. The story begins with our main protagonist Jack, driving his van throughout a forest, until a woman stops her. The woman comes to Jack's window to explain that her car blew a tire, and while trying to change it, she broke her car jack. The woman proceeds to ask Jack for a lift to the nearest blacksmith, who could weld the car jack. Before Jack gets a chance to answer, the woman decides to climb into the car. Without any questions, Jack starts driving towards the blacksmith. During the ride, the woman keeps joking about Jack looking like a serial killer. But after a while of talking with Jack, the woman states that Jack doesn't have what it takes to be a killer. Right after that, Jack decides to prove her wrong by hitting her with the car jack and ultimately killing the woman. After the brutal scene, we are taken to Jack's house, where we can see Jack designing his new project, a house for himself. At the same time we can hear a voice, telling Jack that he is not an architect nor an engineer, but an OCD patient instead. That leads to the conclusion that he is in fact suffering from obsessive compulsion disorder, which Jack doesn't deny, but starts telling how he can't leave a room without it being completely clean and in order. Next we see Jack, disguised as a police detective, trying to talk himself into an older, unsuspecting woman's house. The woman doesn't believe Jack's story because he doesn't have a police badge, but eventually Jack talks her over by promising to double her pension, and she gullibly allows Jack to enter the house. After that, Jack begins to raise his tone, and shouting how humiliated he felt when he wasn't allowed to enter the house. The woman begins to feel uncomfortable and tries to leave the room. Jack doesn't let that happen, and chokes her until she is on the verge of dying. Jack seems to feel regret, and gives the woman a pillow and chamomile, but right after the woman starts to feel better and tries to stand up, Jack proceeds to finish what he started and brutally choked her to death. The choking wasn't enough for Jack, so he pulled out a knife, and stabbed the woman into the chest. Unlike the last time he killed someone, this time he made the victim sit on a couch, and started taking pictures of her. Jack plans to make a collection full of his own murder scene photos. After a successful photo shoot, Jack drags the woman into his van, and starts to clean up the blood in the house with bleach and organizes the furniture. Here is the first time we see Jack's OCD in action. When Jack is leaving the house, he obsessively starts thinking about anything where blood could have gone inside the house, and goes back inside to check if there was blood under rags or lamps. He even checked behind a painting, without any results. Jack repeats the same circle of action 2 more times without finding anything. Just when Jack is finally finished his cleaning session and he has double-checked everything, he hears police sirens closing up. He is about to leave, but once again he has to go check if there's blood under the footstool and goes back inside just to find out there is no blood. When he gets back to the van, the police arrive, but not for Jack. The police officer starts looking around one of the neighbor's front yard. During that time Jack rushes out of the van and throws the body few meters behind the van, so the officer would not find it if he came to check up on Jack. And so he did. Right after Jack went back to the van, the officer pulled next to him. The officer asks Jack to open the back door of his van so he could take a look, and after checking it's empty he told Jack about a break-in nearby, and asks if Jack has seen anything related to that. Jack tells him he hasn't seen anything, but the officer is still suspecting Jack randomly waiting in a car next to the old woman's house. Jack manages to talk himself out of the situation by telling the officer that he is her old friend, and that he thinks she's disappeared. The officer asks Jack to wait at the van while he checks the house, and when the officer went to the house and started looking around, Jack decided to follow him and start shouting how he misses his friend and is questioning if the officer does his job well enough. After that the officer tells Jack to leave, and Jack goes outside and quickly ties the body to the van, since he didn't have time to lift her to the trunk. Jack started driving towards home, while the officer was still in the old woman's house. Since the body is tied to the van, and the body is grating against asphalt, a trail of blood follows Jack all the way to the destination. But gladly for him it starts raining heavily, and all the blood washes away. He calls the place he came to the walk-in freezer, and drags the body inside the freezer. The next victim is presumably Jack's girlfriend, and it has been some time since the last murder. The point of this was supposedly to improve Jack's strangling skills. Isn't it intriguing how much work Jack bothers to do and play along some of his victims' feelings? Maybe Jack is just training his ability to fake feelings, or maybe he just enjoys getting close to the ones whose life he will be ending. This will not be the last time when Jack kills someone that loves him or is very close to him, as we will see shortly. Jack then explains how after several murders he feels like his OCD is slowly fading away, and he starts to take bigger risks, like carrying a body around in the open. After that, Jack brings the body to the walk-in freezer along the older woman's remains, but right after Jack takes a look at the photos he had taken of the body, he is dissatisfied and decides to bring the corpse back to the house where the murder took place. During the journey back, he saw a woman walking in the street and drove over her. He thought that maybe the second dead body will bring some life and humor to the pictures. After bringing the corpses into the house and taking the photos, Jack is very satisfied with the outcome. And signs the pictures with a name, Mr. Sophistication, and sends the pictures to a local newspaper. Jack finally seems happy, and looks like he has raised 2 kids and has a happy marriage. Jack has brought his whole family for a picnic in the forest, and at the same time teaches his older son to shoot a rifle. The kid hit the target quite precisely, which makes his father proud. Even though Jack was the one aiming the rifle and the kid just pulled the trigger, Jack seems like a good father after all. Then a voice inside Jack's head states that Jack has found himself a family, which is answered by Jack's voice saying, "Yes, that's how I like to see it too." After that, the conversation inside his head continues with Jack telling how an animal family is usually killed. He starts with telling how the hind will typically run in the front with the largest fawn, following the smallest last. You typically shoot at a deer starting with the rear one, based on the fact that the 2 older animals can survive without the younger one, whereas if you shot the mother first and didn't get the others, both fawns would probably not survive, so in this manner you shoot the bigger one, and then the mother last. The conversation continues while Jack is looking down the rifle scope towards his family, hiding behind a fallen tree. His older son starts running to the next tree nearby, following the mother and the other son, while Jack complains how his family is moving in the wrong order, indicating that he is thinking about his family as a deer herd. Then Jack explains how he has always taken ethical hunting rules very seriously, and on that point Jack thinks of himself as a bit of a gentleman. The conversation ends when the voice states that Jack isn't a gentleman, but Mr. Sophistication instead. This time, the younger son starts running to another fallen tree seeking for better cover, but since the order is now correct, Jack takes the shot and ends up hitting his younger son's leg off. The mother starts panicking and running towards his dead son, but Jack doesn't shoot her to follow the rules correctly. Couple seconds later, the older son peeks over the fallen tree and Jack immediately shoots him in the head, killing him instantly. Finally, it's time for the picnic. While the mother is in shock, Jack acts like nothing happened and asks the mother to give her son some pie. The mother follows the order and gives the kids pie. After that, Jack praises how excellent of a day it has been, and proceeds to ask the mother for her favorite number. The mother says 12, and Jack starts climbing up the deer stand and counting down from 12. The mother starts walking away, and after Jack reaches 0, he shoots the mother. The mother didn't die from the shot, and while Jack was walking towards the place where he shot her, the mother hid herself into a ditch. It didn't take long for Jack to find her and shoot her in the back, killing the poor lady. Jack brings his dead younger son to the walk-in freezer, and after a couple days, when he had frozen a bit, Jack goes back and has another conversation with the voice in his head about changing dead animals' expressions and body positions. That's exactly what Jack is going to do to his frozen son. The next time we see Jack, he is dragging a black man out of the van and walking him to the walk-in freezer, where it seems that Jack by now has captured a lot of victims. Jack was doing an experiment with the victims, inspired by the Nazi Germany where they had a shortage of bullets. Jack wants to see how many heads can one full metal jacket bullet penetrate, and so just before he is about to shoot, one of the victims point out that the bullet is in fact just a regular hunting round. Jack is furious and apologizes to the victims for the inconvenience and goes straight back to the ammunition store where Al, the arms dealer, is an annoying prick and doesn't let Jack return the mislabeled bullets nor buy a new full metal jacket bullet. Jack leaves the store in anger and drives off. On the way back, he drove too fast and accidentally drove the car in the ditch and managed to get it stuck. He runs to the nearest house and is greeted by an old man who confronts Jack from stealing, and calls the police right away. Jack plays along and manages to manipulate the old guy into giving up his guard and instantly takes out his dagger and knifes him to the throat. After killing the old man, he steals some real full metal jacket bullets and begins to wait for the police's arrival. Jack disguised himself in the old guy's robe, and once the policeman arrives, he immediately shoots him down. Then he decides to jack the police car and drive off to the hideout. This time Jack has an actual full metal bullet and proceeds to load it to the gun. Before he's able to shoot, the rifle's scope is unfocused and he's unable to make a shot. So now he must break into the mysterious locked room behind him to make distance for the shot. Jack left the alarm on in the police car and it has now drawn the attention of another police patrol unit. He doesn't seem to mind. Right before he's about to shoot, a voice calls out for him from the corner of the room. It turns out to be Verge. The voice inside Jack's head has appeared in the room. It turned out that Verge has actually been with Jack all this time, watching him from behind the curtains. Verge reminds Jack about the house that he was supposed to build and gives him the idea to build the house from the frozen murder victims' bodies. Jack thought it was a great idea and started working on it right away. And after some efficient work, here is the result. This will be the end of today's recap. The ending of the movie will be explained in one of the upcoming videos. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe for more content like this.